Pete Golding's number one responsibility in Fayetteville is going to be stopping Taylen Green if Ole Miss wants to get out of there with a victory.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today, we're talking about the number one key to beating the Arkansas Razorbacks, and that is stopping Taylen Green. Green brings shades of Matt Jones from his Arkansas days, but with an edge. He's got Bobby Petrino calling the plays, much like when Petrino coached Lamar Jackson at Louisville. If Green gets going, he can be a serious problem for the Ole Miss defense. That's where Pete Golding comes in. Slowing Green down will be the number one priority. If Ole Miss can contain him, the Rebels will be in a great position to come out on top Saturday. We also talk about incorporating Trey Harris into that OU game plan from a week ago and the importance of the new clock rules to staying on schedule for Ole Miss's offense in the third segment. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make this show what it is. You can start this season off with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, you get those bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Really interesting show. Whenever I was looking at the keys to this game, there was simply one thing that stood out. A lot of times there are multiple keys that if this happens and this happens and this happens, then the game can go your way. But this game is kind of resting on one key, one singular important key that Ole Miss has to deal with, and that is Taylen Green. Before we get started, the story of the day from Ole Miss on SI. They're going over the betting odds and what Vegas thinks in the Ole Miss-Arkansas game on Saturday. It's written by John Macon Gillespie. You can check that out on the Ole Miss on SI page. My take in this game is if Ole Miss contains Taylen Green, they're going to defeat the Arkansas Razorbacks. The way you lose the game is by not containing Taylen Green. And the keys to this game will be simple. Pete Golding containing Taylen Green will be the key in this match of the two top offenses in the Southeastern Conference against one of the better defenses in the Southeastern Conference as well. Number two, Lane Kiffin needs to replicate the OU game plan against Arkansas and incorporate Trey Harris if he comes back into that game plan instead of building a game plan around Trey Harris. And also keep the offense on schedule. Don't allow Petrino to play keep away with the new clock rules the way they've gone this year. There's not many teams that are giving up more than 400 yards a game in the SEC. That is a rarity. I think that is due to the new clock rules and what is going on. Because of that, staying on schedule and keeping the ball is of the utmost importance, or you'll end up with a time of possession disparity like the Ole Miss-Kentucky game. So Taylen Green, the quarterback for Arkansas, is a really good player, and we're going to talk about him in just a second because they just released the game time kickoff for the Georgia game. It is going to be at 2:30 Central Time on ABC. So a full SEC slate without a night game. Thank you, SEC football, for that. That's absolutely ridiculous. But Ole Miss and Georgia will be at 2:30 Central Time on ABC coming from Vaught-Hemingway Stadium on November 9th. So Taylen Green is a major key in this Arkansas offense. When you look at what he has done this season, Taylen Green right now is at 151 for 249, 2,056 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. At this point, he's throwing about an interception per game. He will put the ball at risk from time to time. He likes to run around. He is a tall, lanky, athletic runner. And because of that, your secondary can be in trouble when he scrambles around and he makes those plays downfield. I say that he reminds me a lot of Matt Jones because you can see a lot of what Matt Jones did and what Taylen Green does as well. He's going to scramble. It's going to be imperative that Ole Miss spies him. I think Santarin Perkins is going to have a massive game. We'll talk about him in just a second. But I also think Princely Amamiela needs to be on the field at the same time, and Jared Ivey as well. Our Arkansas team has 22 rushing touchdowns As a team, Ole Miss has given up 1 rushing touchdown. That is going to be a massive key because the big discrepancy that people look at about the Arkansas offense is that they're a passing team. They throw it all around. Arkansas is a run to pass team. They have 22 touchdowns. Now, I do not know the status of Jaquindon Jackson at this point. I know that the freshman running back that played against Mississippi State went over 100 yards, but if you are a running back, you can probably go over 100 yards against Mississippi State. That's just the way it is. But Talon Green is going to play basically backyard football. That is the plan for Arkansas. They are the number 2 SEC team in total offense, and they're explosive. They just genuinely are. When you look at Andrew Armstrong, he's got 722 yards receiving. He's well on his way to 1,000 yards. Again, their leading rusher is Jaquindon Jackson, but we don't know what his status is, but their backup is pretty good as well. And then you have Talon Green, who is the straw that stirs the drink. Pete Golding has to figure out how to stop Talon Green because Arkansas wants to run the football. Ole Miss potentially would be in the best case to where if they played Umar Mielen and Jared Ivey and J.J. Pegues or Walter Nolan and Santarin Perkins on the field at the same time, that's probably the best way to deal with Talon Green. But the problem is the rushing offense that comes from the Arkansas attack. It's going to be imperative that Ole Miss stops that rushing attack. This is going to be like playing old school triple option teams to where the first thing you have to do is stop that fullback. If you do not stop that fullback, you have no chance of stopping the option, the triple option. If the Arkansas running game gets going, Talon Green's going to become that much more effective. Whenever he runs around, his play actions are going to be more effective. Everything becomes more effective when Arkansas is able to run the football. And whenever you're spying that quarterback, and you're going to have to spy that quarterback, and I'm likely with a Santarin Perkins or a Khari Coleman or somebody like that, that is going to slow your run fit down just a little bit. We always talk about the Ole Miss offense, about how whenever they're running well, they torture linebackers. You can't be right. Bobby Petrino does something similar with Talon Green and all the eye candy and everything that they have going on. And because of that, Arkansas has been one of the better offensive teams in the Southeastern Conference. Now, defensive-wise, they're good, not great. Now, they shut down Tennessee, but I think that's more of everybody kind of figuring out that style of offense. When everybody was going to that, Kendall Briles, Josh Heupel, Lane Kiffin, everybody doing that, a bunch of really smart defensive coordinators figured out how to stop that. So whenever you're playing against Arkansas, you're going to need your spies and your 2 defensive ends to really work. And I'm not going to talk about Princely and Umar Mielen, who I think is a major role in this game, but there are 2 players that I think have a chance to be a game changer in this football game. The first player is Santarin Perkins, who is the SEC Defensive Player of the Week 2 out of the last 3 weeks. On the year, he has 41 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hurries, and 8.5 sacks. This is important because the record for sacks at Ole Miss is Sam Williams at 12.5 over the course of the year. That's 4 sacks. That's 1 sack per game. If Santarin Perkins gets multiple sacks in a game, we're officially on record watch. Santarin Perkins is getting the benefit right now of Walter Nolan and Princely and Umar Mielen and J.J. Pegues sucking up double teams. He can go work. And because of that, his athleticism is going to be really key in this game. Santarin Perkins was the player that spied Jalen Milroe on Ole Miss's trip to Alabama a year ago. He is likely going to spy Talon Green as well. I don't know if you'll have a 2-spy type situation, but I think they're going to handle it in kind of unique ways. So we'll see exactly what happens. Talon Green's an unbelievably athletic quarterback and can hurt you in multiple ways. The other player that I think you need to look out for, Jared Ivey. Jared Ivey quietly has 22 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hurries, and 6 sacks on the season. He is getting the benefit of being singled up on the outside a lot as well. So my thought is, and like I said, I do not know what Pete Golding is going to do. I do not know what the game plan is, but Jared Ivey on one side, Suntarine Perkins on the other, I think you can kind of meet at the quarterback with what's going on. And whenever he tries to play backyard football, you need to win those plays. Whenever he throws the ball up for grabs downfield, you need to make the play down the field. And there are a couple of ball hawks in the Ole Miss secondary that has the ability to do that. So we'll see how it goes. But the number one, the main, it's like number one, number three, and number four. That's how big of a key containing Taylen Green is for Pete Golding in this game. Because how Green does, if you had to tell me one stat from this game, after the game, if you told me one stat, it would be tell me what Taylen Green did. Tell me what his stat line was. And if his stat line is going off like it was against Mississippi State, Arkansas likely went off. If stat line was average, Arkansas was probably average. If they were below average, there you go. But this game traditionally has been a rough place for Ole Miss to play. Ole Miss has won, again, 4 out of the last 6 games against Arkansas, but both of their losses were in Fayetteville. There was the 6 interception game by Matt Corral in 2020, and there was the weird Auburn game the night of 2022. So we'll see exactly how that goes as well. Ole Miss needs to make a key adjustment, and that is getting Tre Harris involved in this Oklahoma-style game plan. Do the stuff that Jordan Watkins did. How can this have an impact and change after last week's game against Oklahoma? Stick around for the breakdown and what it means moving forward. Hey, Locked On Ole Miss fans, it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we have pulled over $20,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change, and with the Roy app, you can direct your support to athletes you love, ensuring all funds go to the specific player you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver on the content, you get your money back. This week, I am supporting Suntarine Perkins. I just pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 makes a difference. Let's show Suntarine Perkins the love and keep him connected to our school. Remember, play today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter referral code Locked On, all 2 words, and you are entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase is necessary. Void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. Be sure to check out us on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_ReturnOnYou for more information. Roy, support the players, change the game. So this Oklahoma game, anybody that watched the show yesterday knows how much I liked Saturday's game plan against Oklahoma. I thought the game plan was just about perfect. Now, there were some execution problems here and there. They needed to be a little bit more committed to what was going on. It was perfect. It was exactly what needed to happen. And Ole Miss, basically, once they took control of the game, the second half of that game, they essentially dominated. And from there, they picked up a much-needed win, and all of the good vibes and good feelings were happening. But you have a situation to where Tre Harris could come back. He was a game-time decision against Oklahoma, so I'm assuming he'll at least be a game-time decision against Arkansas. So I'm assuming Tre Harris is going to be back. Jackson Dart is currently 173 for 245, 2,695 yards, 15 touchdowns, 3 picks on the game or on the year. This is a game that probably somewhere midway through the second or third quarter, Jackson Dart should become the all-time total offense leader in Ole Miss history. That's a pretty cool moment for somebody that has given a lot to Ole Miss's program as well. But the key is that Ole Miss does not need to get into the trap and fall into the trap of overusing Trey Harris down the field like they did earlier in the season. Those games and doing that were directly responsible for losing against Kentucky and LSU. Period. You cannot convince me otherwise. If it's just on a game day coach, and I'm dead serious about this, just a game day coach, if Matt Luke was coaching this group, they would be 7-0 right now. Because Matt Luke didn't go for it, he always kicked field goals and he punt the ball when necessary. If you would have just played it straight, just chalk this season, I think Ole Miss is 7-0 right now. But they're not. And the ink is dry on that. Now Ole Miss has to win every single game they play for the remainder of the year, because if they don't, they're out of the playoffs and all sorts of chaos could happen at that point. That's just the way it works out. But Ole Miss on the offensive scheme, they figured something out. They figured stuff out in the pass game. The offensive line looked a lot better. They had roughly about the same amount of time to throw the football total per pass as they did against LSU. And just ignore the sacks in the LSU game. That was enough time. That means that Jackson Dart was getting the ball out of his hand. That means he was distributing it quickly to places that needed to go. Ole Miss was going short to long. Ole Miss was staying on schedule. Ole Miss was getting first downs. Now, there were some big plays that opened up in the second half of that game, because it will. But early on, Ole Miss was probing early to get people to look into the backfield, closer to the line of scrimmage, to where you could hurt them down the field later on in the game. And Ole Miss was able to do that. With Jordan Watkins and without Trey Harris, Ole Miss was able to stretch the field against Oklahoma. Against Arkansas, a similar game plan needs to happen, even with Trey Harris. Do not fall into the trap of Trey Harris coming back and just doing the duck and chucks 40 yards downfield to Trey Harris because he's the best wide receiver in all of college football. I think Ole Miss has a chance to become too reliant on a really good player at the expense of everybody else. Ole Miss becomes easier to defend when they get predictable. And when Ole Miss's passing attack is roughly half Trey Harris, that means that you can just match up and you have the advantage that what I talked about during the offseason, like Ole Miss signed all these players so you could not double team Trey Harris. Well, it just doesn't matter if they know that you're not going to use it. And defenses are dropping back deeper than the deepest at an unbelievable level right now. So underneath is open. Underneath is there if Ole Miss is willing to take it and be patient. If Ole Miss does that and they play like they did in the second half of the Oklahoma game, they're not going to lose another football game. And that includes the Georgia Bulldogs. And the second half of what was set up, the defense just completely shut down Oklahoma, and the offense was just efficiently moving the ball down the field. They committed to the bit. You know, you heard me talking about that. If Ole Miss is going to truly play to the defense, you need to truly play to the defense, not truly play to the defense, except, well, this time it feels like it would work. It's kind of like, you know, you go in with your $25 to the casino and it doesn't work. You're out of money. You're getting ready to walk out of the casino and all of that. And you have that feeling when you're walking out. It was like, well, if I go to the ATM and take out another $20, maybe that would win. And sometimes that is how Ole Miss got in trouble in the first half against Oklahoma. Kind of getting greedy, kind of playing the gambler's mindset a little bit. When if you kick the field goal, like I said, it was 13-7, you're going to end up winning that game 30-7. It would have looked a whole lot differently. So I don't think anybody needs to worry necessarily. That game was nothing structural. And Taylor Green, we talked about in the first, he's a running quarterback, and everybody's going to say, well, Jackson Arnold ran for 100 yards gross before the sacks against Ole Miss. Well, Ole Miss was playing a lot of two-man in that game because Jackson Arnold hadn't shown the ability to run. That's the reason that was there. Taylor Green is not going to see any two-man in Fayetteville, where that's two safeties deep and man-to-man underneath. You can't play that against a mobile quarterback. That's rule number one. Jackson Arnold kind of surprised Pete Golding in the first half by having that available, picked up some first downs, and was able to be a little bit successful on the run. In the second half, that wasn't available at that level. It just wasn't. Ole Miss was just destroying everything. So we'll see how it goes. Jackson Dart looked a whole lot more like himself when his rhythm and confidence was able to be improved over the first part of the game. I think you will see a situation where Jackson Dart remembers what going to Fayetteville was last time. It won't be a new situation. Fayetteville, for everybody's information, is a relatively difficult place to play. The way it's set up, it's got weird climate. It's just a little bit different. And Ole Miss has struggled up there for whatever reason, especially when you go up for the first time. Matt Corral did, Jackson Dart did. People struggle going into that environment. I like to joke about it. It's like their stadium, the Reynolds Razorback Stadium. It's like a Jim Walter home. If you go into the press box is like a trailer that's mounted up in the concrete that they've made to look nice. So I always call it like a Jim Walter home at a Walmart University or a Great Value University, just messing around with it, doing the rival thing. But it's an interesting place. It looks difficult. Now, I do really enjoy before the game, the fans call the Hogs, and on the third time when they call the Hogs, they all run out. They do a lot of cool traditions. For the longest time, Arkansas, with their Southwest Conference roots, it was just a little bit different. It's pretty cool. I like the calling of the Hogs. I like Arkansas, and I am so thankful that whenever the SEC goes to 9 conference games, it looks like Ole Miss is going to keep Arkansas. They're going to keep LSU. They're going to keep State. I think that's as good as can be expected with the schedule changes that are likely coming. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Ole Miss, according to Vegas and according to everybody, has a better team than Arkansas. But Ole Miss had a better team against Kentucky, and Ole Miss had a better team against LSU. And they dropped both of those games. So it is okay to be confident about this Arkansas game, because you should be, honestly. I don't know if I would just 100% chalk it up as should. Like, there's a difference between can and will. There's a difference between can't and won't. And understanding those differences is probably going to help you in the prediction machine as this moves forward. New clock rules make every second count. Can Ole Miss stay on schedule and keep Bobby Petrino from controlling the pace? Stay tuned for how the Rebels avoid to get slowed down during the game. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need in place to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. Ole Miss is currently a 6.5-point favorite over the Arkansas Razorbacks. The over-under is kind of settled at 55.5 points. But we all know how weird this series can be. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can now check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So I was sitting here looking at stats, preparing for my key things, and whenever I was looking to see exactly what Arkansas's defense looks like and what everybody's defense looks like, and it was kind of interesting to see. And because not many teams are giving up more than 400 yards a game. Last year, over half the conference gave up over 400 yards per game. And the question becomes, have the defenses become better, or have teams started to figure out how to use the clock to their advantage to prevent other teams from having the opportunity to score all those points? Against LSU and against Kentucky, Ole Miss, basically both of them, we all joke about it, with Ole Miss doing their duck and chucks, they just sunk back deeper than the deepest and just waited for Ole Miss to self-destruct. That's what they did. But all of this underneath territory was available, which is going to require teams to kind of chew up drives, trying to grind stuff out. The whole thing of college kids, if you allow them to, will make mistakes, is kind of the game plan of everybody inside the Southeastern Conference right now. Ole Miss kind of included. When you look at Jackson Dart's numbers this season, he's the number one passer in the entire SEC, largely because of those first 4 games. I admit that as well. But 173 completions, 245 attempts, 2,695 yards, 15 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Really big for Jackson Dart. Like I said, midway through the second or third quarter, Jackson Dart is likely going to become the all-time total offense leader in a career at Ole Miss. And at some point in time in the Georgia game, he's going to become the second all-time leading passer. We are at that stage of the season where Jackson Dart just has records to break all over and over. You're going to hear us talking about him breaking records pretty consistently over the next month. Also, Suntarine Perkins, 4 sacks shy of the season sack leader, which is Sam Williams. He had 12.5. Suntarine Perkins is at 8.5. Ole Miss has 4 regular season games, and either the playoffs or a bowl game, which Suntarine Perkins is a sophomore. He is not opting out. There's nothing to opt out for, so he has a chance to get a sack in that one as well. Really important stuff. Staying on schedule is going to be massive for Jackson Dart. And that's what he did against Oklahoma. That's what is going on with Ole Miss offensively, getting first downs, not worrying about touchdowns so much, getting first downs, using players like Daquan Wright, who this season has 8 catches for 125 and a touchdown. He did have a drop against Oklahoma, but he was big in Ole Miss running 12 personnel and everything looking a little bit differently. Caden Prieskorn caught the big touchdown pass in the game, has 17 catches, 274 yards, and 2 touchdowns. These are big pieces for staying on schedule. Trey Harris, best receiver in all of college football. But when the run game has been struggling at the level that Ole Miss's run game has been struggling at recently, you need some extensions of the run game to appear, and that is going to be the screen game over to whoever's playing tailback whenever they do their empty sets. They're going to do some stuff where you always don't know if the tight end's going to block, so you're going to see some wheel routes from time to time. But Ole Miss has a chance against Arkansas to really unlock this defense. Arkansas's defense is pretty good. They held Tennessee to 10 points or something like that. Some absurdly low number. Good little defense. They have Landon Jackson, I believe, on the edge. Really good pass rusher. That's somebody for Diego Pounds or Julius Buelow if he starts to take that position over as they're trying to protect Jackson Dart. Now you need to figure out the run game. Essentially, you need to kind of iron everything out this week so that everything's ready to go for the Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, that's kind of the goal, right? You can't really have a broken run game against the Georgia Bulldogs. They're too good. So Ole Miss is going to need to figure some stuff out. Right now, Henry Parrish is not breaking tackles. Ulysses Bentley is not getting overly used, and Matt Jones has been injured. Maybe it's time for Rashad Amos or Dominic Thomas to get some handoffs and carries in the game as well. We'll see exactly how that goes. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number one Ole Miss sports podcast out there. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And exciting news, you can now become a Locked On Ole Miss insider, the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. It's our texting program that sends you notifications on anything relevant without the hassle of message boards filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college sports coverage. We're adding new perks as you go, so do not miss out. The link is down in the description. For those of you watching on YouTube, we're going to send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.